Hey gang, it's me, Uncle Todd here, and tonight we've got a really fun one. This is Assignment Terror. Spanish horror star Paul Naschy's tribute to the Universal Monster Rallies of the 40s. In this, we've got everything. Aliens, tough cops, a werewolf, a mummy, a vampire, a not Frankenstein monster. And of course, since this is a Paul Naschy film, lots of romance. Especially for Naschy. He's the writer. He can have as much romance as he wants in a film. Naschy is a very prolific actor, screenwriter, sometime director. Also a title-holding weightlifter. And if you've ever seen any of his films, he deserves that title. Man is huge. He's known as the Spanish Karloff for his many horror roles. He's played tons of monsters. He's played mummies, zombies, vampires, Mr. Hyde. He's also known as the Spanish Lon Chaney Jr. because his most popular and the part he's played the most in film is Voldemort Deminsky, the werewolf. And this was one of his earlier films. I believe, if I'm correct, Frankenstein's Bloody Terror was the first Voldemort Deminsky film. This followed that, and despite its title, it wasn't a Frankenstein movie. They just changed the original title to the American distributor to fulfill a contract obligation for a Frankenstein film, and then they just added a little bit of dialogue saying that the Frankensteins changed their name to this, and then the whole film turned into be a werewolf versus vampires film. This film starts with aliens coming to Earth and taking over the dead bodies of several scientists. Their plan? To resurrect monsters from Earth's mythology, replicate them, then send these armies out to kill everyone so that then they can take over the planet because theirs is dying. And they don't have to worry about any radioactive fallout from just starting a nuclear war. It's a rather complicated plan. Okay, it's not a plan that makes much sense. But it's a horror flick, so we'll go with it. The main alien is played by Michael Rennie, who's most famous as Klaatu from The Day the Earth Stood Still. This was sadly his final film. And even sadder, you don't get to hear his actual voice. It's dubbed over by another actor. But even without his actual voice, he's still a charming devil.
Beautiful women are like powerful magnets. We shall use them to attract scientists, generals, statesmen with their vital secrets.
Their first objective is at a carnival, where at a sideshow attraction, the famed skeleton, with a stake through its heart, of Count Damalov is on display. Warnoff sends his confederate, Dr. Bernstein, to seduce the carnival owner, and they can steal the body. the carnival owner's daughter, is taken with them, and she is brainwashed into being a slave. Enter our hero, Inspector Toberman. Being an open-minded kind of guy, and wondering about the fact that the skeleton also disappeared, he goes to a library to look up a specific book on ancient myths and monsters, and makes a rather grisly discovery. After kidnapping some other women and turning them into slaves, the aliens next turn their attention to the werewolf and dig up Voldemort Deninsky's body. Well, take it out of its crypt. And during an operation, remove the silver bullets from his heart. And Dr. Warman gives the explanation that the silver bullets only paralyzed him into a death-like state. In order for them to have really worked, they would have had to have been fired by a woman who loves him enough to die for him. Foreshadowing. They then make the mistake of giving him pretty weak chains when they chain him up, because he woofs out at the next full moon and escapes. Pretty shoddy mortar work there in that dungeon. The werewolf goes on the prowl and attacks one woman, but fails to get her as she manages to fight him off and drive off in her car. Then he next attacks what I assume was a prostitute and kills her. Unfortunately, the copy I have does not contain that footage. But he is returned and recaptured, and they brainwash him to keep his human part docile and under their control. Now at this point, they've located the tomb of Tau Tet, the mummy. And people are dispatched to collect him.
Dr. Varnoff is directing his movements.
While that's happening, Toberman goes to question the woman who escaped the werewolf. She turns out to be Ilsa Sternberg, a old school friend of his from when they were kids. And over the course of this film, they will fall in love with each other. Meanwhile, once the mummy has been brought back, the Frankenstein Monster has been found. Vornoff and Voldemort go to retrieve that one, leaving Dr. Kirsten and Dr. Kiernan to run things while he's gone. At that point, their vampire, the Count Damalov, sets his sights on Dr. Kirsten. Dr. Kiernan was watching on the monitor and could interrupt this before she was vampirized. This unfortunately is leading to a discovery. The emotions of the human bodies they are occupying are starting to come to the forefront. And the two doctors are starting to give in to those feelings. Meanwhile, Warnoff returns with the Frankenstein Monster, revives him, and then sends him on a test to see if his mind control works well. Of course, he didn't let the monster kill Daninsky because, well, it's a werewolf if you kill him. And can you kill a werewolf if you strangle him? Hard to say. Whichever, Warnoff is a dick. Meanwhile, turns out Alota, remember her brainwashing is wearing off, and she has fallen in love with the hunky Daninsky. And Dr. Karstein, who's getting more and more empathetic, helps him escape. Then that night, she and Dr. Kiernan meet for a tryst. Warnoff finds out, and he's starting to get emotions too, and he's a bit jealous of this. Of course, he doesn't kill Dr. Karstein, but he does put her in the brainwashing machine so that she will stop causing all these problems. Anyway, the other lovebirds, not Toblerone and Ilsa, but Daninsky and Alona, are discussing what to do. Daninsky knows their love is doomed. She does too. And so he gives her something that will solve their problem down the line.
If a silver bullet
is fired by a woman who loves you enough to die with you.
And they say romance is dead. Anyway, after much investigating, Doberman has set his sights on Dr. Warnoff and visits him at an abandoned monastery where he's set up his lab. Here, in classic villain fashion, Warnoff tells him everything, the whole plan. He even tells them who they are and what planet they're from. He then throws them in the dungeon and has Count Demiloff to grab Ilsa. But the one thing Warnoff had not counted on was Daninsky, who earlier that day had visited his old friend, who happens to be the town mayor, and Ilsa's father. Gathering up the forces of the law, they go to surround the castle. Because you can't have a Universal style movie without torch-wielding villagers, even though these ones aren't carrying torches, they're flashlights. But you get it. He and Ilona then sneak back into the monastery. This is the night of the full moon. This is all part of Daninsky's plan, where he frees Toberman. Toberman then goes to rescue Ilsa. Yeah, he's been a pretty piss-poor vampire throughout the film. Well, Toberman and Ilsa are reunited. And then they run into the mummy. But before they have to deal with him, Daninsky has changed into a werewolf and he attacks the mummy. Then, while Ilsa and Toberman escape, the werewolf dispatches the mummy in a very un-werewolf-like way. Since when did werewolves become tool users? That doesn't matter. Because now we get the battle we've been waiting for. The rematch, basically, between the Wolfman and the Frankenstein Monster. Or in this case, the Polish werewolf and the Feroxylon Monster. And he's about as easy to defeat as the mummy was. Well, with all the fighting done, there's nothing left but for the Romeo and Juliet ending. And thus, the legend is fulfilled. They die together in each other's arms. It's a tear to your eye. But aliens aren't going to get away. The fight has damaged the lab so much, the whole place is going to blow up. And they can't get away. Well, they could if their superiors would bring them back. But they don't want to do that because, they failed. But Warnoff makes a case for Dr. Kirstein to be saved, and she fades away. And he awaits his fate. But not before telling them that the human weakness of emotion is actually their greatest strength. Who knew? Every other sci-fi alien invasion movie, basically. But never mind. And the hero, Toberman, acting like he actually did anything to save the day, walks off with his love, Ilsa. The end. It's actually a pretty fun film. Like a lot of Naschy's films, if you actually start to think about what's going on, it doesn't make any sense. That's just what his films are. They're just enjoyable schlock with a lot of fun things, lots of monster attacks and women that fall all over his character. Every film, he just has women falling over. But, you know, hey, when you're the writer and producer, you can have that happen. One of the things I like about this film is that each time one of the monsters is introduced, they get a little scene to show, you know, how scary they are. Like the vampire, after he's revived, he tries to hypnotize one of the women. When the mummy is revived, he goes and kills their guide who led them to the tomb, which also covers their tracks. And of course, you saw that the werewolf went out and attacked someone, and the Frankenstein Monster, he beat up the werewolf, which adds a little tension there in their second fight. Yeah. One of the things that's really odd about the film is the score. A lot of times, very inappropriately, there'll just be upbeat, jazzy score. That happens a lot in Naschy's films. I guess he liked that kind of score, but it's really jarring at times. And but I really like this film. I'm a Naschy fan. The only problems that he has is, if you've ever seen any of his films where they're not dubbed into English, but they're subtitled, his performances are amazing. He gives these very intense performances, but when they're dubbed, because his face doesn't give a lot of emotion, the people that dub them don't give him a lot of emotion, when all the emotion is in his voice, his original voice. And I like that about him. You know, that, with that inhaled tension, it's just waiting to come out. Definitely one of my favorite of his films. Strange enough, it's better known by its other title, Dracula vs. Frankenstein, even though the vampire doesn't fight the other monster. And there is already another film, Dracula vs. Frankenstein, made by Al Adamson, that came out like a year later. But as things go, it's a great homage to the old Universal films, and there's a lot of throwbacks throughout with lines or situations. And for a Universal fan, this is just it's a great little testimonial to it, as a way you could say. Well, that's all I have to say about this. Please hit like, share, and subscribe. Oh, and stay after the credits for my favorite scene.
To escape. We'll never accomplish our mission if you act irrationally, if you let yourself be dominated by emotion. Do you understand why I must do this to you?
Yes. I'm a woman with a woman's intuition. You will have to do it for the same reason you killed Kyrian. You were jealous of him.